Hello, boys and ghouls. Today I'm going to read you a chilling tale based on a true story called What Only the Girl Could See. Now sit back, relax, and try not to get too scared. There once was a girl sitting on her sofa reading a book by the tableside lamp like any young girl might do. Above her hung a blood-stained old woman on the ceiling, with grotesquely rotating limbs as she slobbered and gasped like a dying fish, but the girl paid her no attention. The woman was nothing but gray and red splotches of skin stretched over a skeletal frame, with her elbows and knees bent backwards like a spider, clinging to the rafters, her eyes grown over with cataracts as they stared at the girl without seeing, and her decrepit face contorted into a silent scream. She darted around wildly in a disjointed fashion, and finally the girl glanced up toward the ceiling and saw the demonic creature there, but the girl only shook her head and looked away. This girl was a special girl. She had something called hypnagogia. She wasn't mentally ill, and science and doctors told her that what she saw wasn't really there. The girl lived in sort of a fantasy, that is to say, she dreamed while she was still awake. This made her quite different from most people, but what she had wasn't rare, just more than most. Have you ever woken up and couldn't move, but you thought you saw something menacing standing by your bedside, or creatures whispering around you? That wasn't a demon or an alien, it was sleep paralysis, and your body did it between when you slept and when you awoke. This was the world the girl inhabited. The girl didn't believe in magic things or spirits. She read a lot of books, and all of them told her that the people she saw, sometimes just out of the corner of her eye, other times full on and even staring her down, these weren't real people, and they hadn't lived some life before or came to her for some purpose or something. It was just a trick in the girl's brain, and she reminded herself of that. There were all sorts of people she would see in these visions, sometimes modernly dressed, sometimes looking old-fashioned, and while most of them were strangers, some of them she knew. But like any dream, they were illusory, and quick to disappear, at least at first. Yet, after a while, the things the girl began to stay around longer and longer. They started to appear as though they were attached to other people, one might say, like the girl's loved ones. First she noticed her at her sister's house, that when her sister spoke at the dinner table, there was a small, hunched figure sat upon her shoulder, its face hid behind a long, beaky mask, like a kind of plague doctor used to wear. Her sister wasn't always nice to her, and she saw that when the bird-looking creature leaned in and whispered into her sister's ear, she would spit out something nasty, like it was feeding the words to her. Of course, the girl was frightened, but she didn't want to freak her family out, and so she stayed silent. In time, she would get used to the people and creatures that came along with them. In her mind, she knew that there was logic to these entities. Like anything a psychologist would tell you, there was a reason for them being there and the way they were there and who they seemed to be stuck to, just like there's a reason for what we see in dreams. For instance, her father was a smoker for 40 years, and she would see him being followed by a wheezing, sickly thing with bloated lungs. This just signified her worry about his health, and that one day his cigarettes might get the better of him. Or the giant faceless man cackling with laughter that trailed her boss at the supermarket where the girl worked. The boss was always one to shout and then chuckle at his employees to embarrass them, so it only seemed fitting that his creature should be brutish, monstrous-looking thug. More and more now, the girl could look at any person and see what she called their monster. She was unnerved to the point of trembling as she cashed out an impatient woman at the grocery store one day, watching a gaggle of slithering, growling gray beasts bounce around her feet with agonized cries like those of children. The girl only had a couple of closed loved ones ask her what theirs looked like, and afterward, they probably wished they hadn't. It didn't matter where the girl went. It could be home, or at a friend's house, or the airport. The ugly, nasty things trailed each and every human she came across. And then there were the worst ones of all, the truly bizarre and grotesque ones that could be called demons, even if the girl didn't believe in them. These ones would always go about on the ceiling like it was in their own personal world. They might be big, nasty, black hog creatures, snorting and sniffing until they opened their toothy maws and let out a raspy scream. Or gray-blue child cadavers, giggling and crawling around upside down just above the girl's head, taunting her with bloated little faces and wagging black tongues. Soon the girl learned it was the best to simply to keep her eyes down upon the floor, for fear of what she might see dangling just above. The girl grew older, and she learned to cope, and led the very best life she could. She was honest with her doctors and her family, and they knew about her struggles, but she was still resolute in the fact that nothing in these waking dreams was real or could hurt her. There was one thing, though, that the girl never told anyone. Not a single soul would ever learn of her deepest, darkest fear, the one that she learned she could contain most easily when she lived on her own, away from the rest of the world, the one that chilled her to the bone in a way that the ceiling creatures never could. The girl turned off the shower head and stepped out on the bathroom carpet, eyelids shut to shield against the mop of dripping brown hair. She fumbled blindly for a towel, and even as she did, unwittingly stood beneath a nest of slithering blood-white entities, humanoid yet so foreign from anything the girl had ever seen, and they scattered like cockroaches to the fair corners of the ceiling when she wiped away the water and opened her eyes, wrapping the towel around herself and shivering in uncertainty. She took the brush, and as best as she could, to tease out her long wavy hair, her gaze avoiding any shiny reflection that might be unintentionally catch off the shower to the sliding glass door. She struggled to dry off, and then get her clothing just so, to make herself presentable, standing in front of the wall, bare save for a single nail that once held up the mirror, now lying on the floor under a dirty old sheet like the rest of them. It wasn't that the girl had never seen her monster. Her terrifying secret was that she had, and so she had promised herself that she would never look upon her own face again, lest that thing resurface in her eyes. And that was what only the girl could see. Thank you for listening, and I hope you subscribe. Thank you.